Okay, we're going to touch upon what has to be done to these units once they arrive at on site. The first thing is each unit should be set up on a gravel base, level both directions. It's a pontoon base. You probably need 6 to 8 inches of gravel beneath it. Just make sure it's level both directions, or as close as you can to level both directions. The second thing is the units have been shipped without their lock set installed. The reason for this was prevent damage to the lock set, and it would exceed the 8'6" shipping dimension. So you have to install all the lock sets. These will be numbered and they'll be paired up for each container. Be aware that every lock on both these containers is keyed the same. So one key will get all locks, deadbolts, and everything. Third thing is you're going to have to install roof trusses. Now, the units right now do not have the tarp on top, which will be put on for shipping for additional water protection. And there's also going to be some lath on the side. You need to remove the lath and remove the tarp before you install the roof trusses and plywood. Whenever you pull the lath off the side, we want you to tape the hole with this special tie-back tape to prevent a leak point through the tie-back material, so we don't get water into the sheathing material. So wherever there's a nail hole, cover it with this tie-back. You got a small roll, which is enough to do plenty of holes in both. There's one in each container. Obviously, also after you set it up, you'll have to provide OSHA-approved type steps and railing for each door, which is to be done on site, and that's not a big deal. It can be done. The other thing is these units are going to be sided on site. We understand that it will be horizontal cedar siding. Can go right over the tie-back. This tie-back is made sprinkled with grooves, so there's a drainage plane behind the cedar. Should be no problem nailing in right through this. This happens, behind the tie-back is 7/16 oriented strand board, so there's plenty of nail bite for the siding. Assuming that they're set level, you got the lock set up, you got the siding on and the roof done, what do we do with the electrical? The biggest thing with the electrical is you need a single point, 200 amp, 208 volt, single phase connection through this disconnect. Now you have to mount a meter, come up either overhead or underground into the meter, then into this disconnect. This is a fuse disconnect, and there's fuses inside. Also, we are providing a ground rod. The ground rod needs to be driven into the ground, the panel needs to be grounded, and the pontoon needs to be grounded also. Both of those should be connected to this common ground rod. I would drive the ground rod right near where this is, and then you can tie both of the disconnect and that into that ground rod. Very important to do. Remember, comply with all NEC, federal and state, local codes. After the power is connected, the thing you want to do is unpack and install all of the fluorescent tubes into 2 fixtures. There's a fixture in the front of the unit in the operator's area, and then a fixture in the back where the water connections are. Each one has 2 tubes and has a metal cage. These have been shipped separately so that they don't bounce out during shipping and break. So you'll have to look for the box that has the fluorescent tubes and also the cages. So you need to install the tubes and the cages. At that point, make sure everything is hooked up properly, and then you can activate the disconnect, which will give you power to your main panel. This is your main electrical panel. It's a 200 amp service. You have breakers. They're all called out as to what they are. You can flick one breaker on at a time, make sure everything works fine before you flick everything on. So that's pretty self-explanatory. It's connected to the main disconnect through rigid conduit outside. As far as the GARN unit is concerned, we'll go back to the other side. Before you install or fill the GARN unit with water, you have to install 3 electrical elements in the off-peak electric box. The bottom 3 holes were left blank, left open. We did not want to install the elements because we feared that bouncing the elements might bend. Not a good thing for the elements, and you wouldn't be able to service them easy. You have to install the elements into those 3 fittings down there, and then connect a pair of wires to each element, and they're taped in pairs, so it should be pretty easy to do. Put the cover back on there. The cover will be on the switch gear, so you don't have to worry about that. The other thing you will do is review the GARN manual. The motor and the blower wheel are being shipped in a box. Again, we were worried about shipping. You'll have to assemble the motor to the mounting plate, put the blower wheel on, and mount this to the GARN unit. That is all explained in the instructions that come with the unit. You will find on top of this tank, right near the front and right near the back, are 2 openings in which you also have to install the flexible vertical anode rods. These are magnesium anode rods. Again, not installed at the factory here because we were concerned about damage of the rods swinging around inside the tank. Easy to install. You drop the rod through the hole, you tighten it down. Don't use pipe dope, just tighten the rod down. We want good electrical connection between the rod and the tank. I think that's about all. Oh, one other thing is this is an exhaust fan, and it's hooked to a humidistat that will control the humidity within inside of the unit here. So basically, if you bring in some wet wood, which you should be using only dry wood to heat with, but if it's a little bit damp, this humidistat will turn this exhaust fan on. Now, the exhaust duct is closed off for shipping so it doesn't bounce around. What you do is unscrew it counterclockwise until you get about a 1/2 inch gap, like that. And that opens that duct up to the exhaust fan. The exhaust fan is on the outside. This is a humidistat, and this is a variable speed drive. So right now it's locked on high, and humidistat you can set where you want to maintain an indoor humidity. I think that is everything on this end. You'll have to read the GARN manual for setting up of the controls for the off-peak for the wood. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Also, when you take the tarp off the top, you'll notice that at 3 points by each door is about 1 foot of wire for outdoor light. Now, the outdoor lights are all interconnected with a switch beside the personnel doors. They are provided in boxes. Again, we could not install those because of shipping width restrictions. So you'll have to mount and install the outdoor lights, and you will see that they're pre-boxed. There's 3 of them, 1 by the overhead door, 1 by each personnel door. Okay, I'm in the back of the unit now where the connections are to hook to the heating system of the building. And the one thing you'll notice is we could not install the flue. Again, for shipping height restrictions, the flue is provided, and the drawings that come with it on how to place the trusses on the roof and stuff like that clearly show where the flue passes through the roof. So you'll have to take the Class A flue that's provided, drop it through the roof, and connect it to the GARN unit, which is a twist lock connection. You have to use high temperature silicone between each flue joint, and then tape the joints on the outside with aluminized tape in order for them to remain tight. So the flue then has to go at least 3 feet above the roof. Everything is provided except for the final flashing piece. The final flashing piece is generally provided with the roofing supplier because of it's corrugated roofing, so the corrugations have to fit. But the roof supports and stuff like that are all provided as part of the trusses. Again, you got a light to take care of here. Put the fluorescent tubes in and the cage. Down here, beneath here, there is an overflow from the tank. You need to place a bucket under the overflow. Try not to overfill the tank. The overflow will come out here. If you put a hose in a tank and walk away for a few hours, you'll overflow the bucket, it'll overflow on the floor, and you'll have a lot of damage in here. We're going to put a hose on here so that it easily goes into a bucket, but when you fill this tank, you want to make sure that you do not overflow much into that bucket before you turn the water off. The other thing is, during your first firing, the water's going to expand in the tank, it's going to overflow in the bucket. You're going to dump this bucket 3 or 4 times during your first firing. If you get it up to 200 degrees the first time, that's its maximum expansion. Dump all the water out that gets into the bucket. Again, it may take 3 or 4 times, 3 or 4 dumps by the time the expanded water is cleared. And then you've set a dry bucket under there, and that should be the max that you'll ever have to worry about overflow and expansion. But very critical thing, do not put a hose in this unit to fill it and walk away for a day. You'll spill hundreds of gallons of water in here. It does not take long to fill this unit. At 10 GPM well flow, this unit will be filled in about 3 hours. If you got a higher flow rate, it'll be less. If slightly lower flow rate, it'll take slightly longer. Very critical issue. There is also a boiler drain down at the bottom. Now, on top of the unit is a manhole that you can lift up. You want to follow the instructions in the GARN unit as how to clean this boiler. There are pre-clean chemicals, so you fill it, you put the pre-clean chemicals in, you let them sit in there for a while. You can turn the electric elements on for a while to heat the tank up to like 120 and 30. The hotter you have it like that, the better it is. Do not fire the unit below a starting water temperature of about 80 degrees. If you fire the unit with a water temperature below 80, you're going to get a tremendous amount of condensation in the flue. And that's just going to create problems because you're building water up in the flue. We would recommend that you valve off all the valves to the pump during the cleaning process. Do not open those valves until you have totally cleaned the tank. And once the tank is clean, you do your final fill and you put your water treatment chemicals in, then you can open those valves. And that's by far the best way to do it. So you have valve here, and you have valves either side of the pump. Turn everything off so none of the cleaning chemical gets into the piping to the heat exchanger. This is the heat exchanger. The GARN unit connects on this side of the heat exchanger. There's 2 access ports that are covered. The covers pop right off. This is where the hot water supply and hot water return connect to the building. You can drill a hole any place in this wall, right through the wall here, because this is a stress skin insulated panel building. There are no studs in there. You want to make sure that you counterflow this. So the return from the building goes in the bottom and the supply to the building comes out the top. That's counterflow exchange. You do not do counterflow exchange, your efficiency of transfer drops way off. You'll never hit your BTU capacity of this unit. So again, you can put holes pretty much any place through this wall, one for supply, one for return pipe. Return from the building goes here, supply to the building goes there. It's a counterflow.